The wounded alien princess. The battlefield was nothing but smoke, fire, and death. Sergeant Daniel Carter moved through the rubble, his pulse steady despite the chaos around him. The war on Epsilon Prime had been raging for weeks, and he had seen more than enough bloodshed. But today was different. Today, something felt off. Carter, move. We've got civilians trapped in that building. His squad mate, Private Jenkins, shouted over the radio. Carter sprinted forward, dodging debris and laser fire. The enemy forces were retreating, but the destruction they left behind was devastating. Bodies of different species, humans, aliens, soldiers, and innocents, littered the ground. But then, among the ruins, something caught his eye. A girl. She wasn't human. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, her long silver hair covered in dust and blood. The uniform she wore was unmistakable, royalty. A Zavarian, one of the most advanced and isolated alien species in the galaxy. And she was dying. Her golden blood pooled beneath her, staining the rubble like liquid sunlight. Her breathing was shallow, her chest barely rising and falling. Carter knelt beside her, quickly assessing the wound. A plasma blast had torn through her stomach, a fatal injury for most beings. She blinked weakly, her golden eyes unfocused as she looked at him. "A human," she whispered, barely audible. Carter activated his radio. "This is Sergeant Carter. I found a wounded Zavarian. She's in critical condition. I need a medic ASAP." Silence. Then the response came, tense and hesitant. "Sergeant, there's no compatible blood supply for a Zavarian. Even if we stabilize her, she won't last long." Carter gritted his teeth. He knew what they meant. Zavarians were biologically unique. No human, no alien, no one had ever been able to give them blood. The girl would die here, on this ruined battlefield, unless... A crazy thought struck him. "Try my blood." "Negative, Sergeant. That's not how this works. Zavarian biology will reject it. She'll go into shock and..." "She's already dying," Carter snapped. "We either try or we watch her die." The radio was silent again. Then, reluctantly, the medic replied. "Understood. We'll prepare for a direct transfusion. But you're signing your own death warrant if this goes wrong." Carter didn't care. He ripped off his armor, exposing his arm as the medic rushed over. The girl tried to speak, tried to protest, but she was too weak. The needle went in. At first, nothing happened. The monitors beeped steadily. Then, suddenly, they spiked. The girl's body convulsed. Her golden blood mixed with Carter's, a swirling, impossible combination. The medical team panicked, but Carter held the girl's hand, his grip firm. Her breathing stopped. Carter's heart dropped. "Come on," he whispered. "Come back." Then, a sharp gasp. The girl's body arched as life surged through her. The wound in her stomach began to close, the golden blood turning red, human red. The entire team stared in shock. This was impossible. Zavarian physiology was unchangeable. No outside species had ever merged with their DNA before. But now, Carter's blood had changed her. Her golden eyes flickered open. But this time, they weren't golden. They were a deep crimson, just like a human's. She turned her gaze to Carter, staring at him with awe, confusion, and something else, something dangerous. Then, with unexpected strength, she pushed herself up, ignoring the medics. She knelt before him, and in a voice that sent shivers down everyone's spine, she spoke. "I owe you my life, and by Zavarian law, my entire existence belongs to you now." Carter had no idea what those words meant, but he was about to find out. The impossible recovery. Sergeant Daniel Carter had seen a lot in his years of service. He had fought on war-torn planets, survived ambushes, and lost good men to battles that should never have happened. But this was something beyond war, beyond logic, beyond anything he could have prepared for. The Zavarian girl should be dead. Instead, she knelt before him, her once golden eyes now a deep crimson. Her breath was steady, her hands no longer trembling, and the gaping wound in her stomach was gone. The battlefield was silent, save for the distant echoes of war still raging beyond the ruined city. The medics, his squad mates, even the Zavarian prisoners they had captured, everyone was frozen, staring at the impossible. Carter took a slow step back. "Hey, you don't have to." She lowered her head even further, her silver hair falling around her shoulders. "No," she said, her voice stronger now. "You don't understand. I am bound to you. Forever." Carter glanced at the medics, hoping one of them had an explanation, but they looked just as confused as he felt. One of them, Lieutenant Drayton, finally snapped out of his shock and checked the monitors. His voice was unsteady. This doesn't make sense. Zavarian DNA is closed. It doesn't change, doesn't mix, doesn't evolve. Yet somehow, Sergeant Carter's blood didn't just save her. It became part of her. Another medic finished, his voice barely a whisper. Carter clenched his fists. "And what the hell does that mean?" The girl lifted her head. "It means I am no longer purely Zavarian." Her eyes burned with intensity. "I am something new." Silence. Then, Private Jenkins let out a low whistle. "Well, asterisk. Carter sighed. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of cultural thing this is, but you don't owe me anything. I just did what any soldier would have done." The girl tilted her head. The gesture was oddly precise, almost calculating. "Any soldier would give his blood, knowing it could kill me. Any soldier would risk his own life for an enemy princess." Carter exhaled sharply. "All right, fine. Maybe not any soldier. But still." "I am Syra," she interrupted, "daughter of High Emperor Valkas of the Zavarian Dominion." That got a reaction. The captured Zavarian soldiers nearby gasped. A sharp, synchronized sound of horror and disbelief. Carter rubbed his forehead. "You're telling me I just saved a Zavarian princess?" "You did more than save me," Syra said, her voice oddly calm. "You have changed me. My body is adapting. And by the laws of my people, a life debt has been formed." Carter didn't like the way she said that. "Yeah. And what does that mean?" One of the Zavarian prisoners, a grizzled warrior, his silver armor scorched from battle, spat at the ground. "It means you own her now, human." Carter blinked. "Wait. What?" The soldier sneered. "She is bonded to you, by ancient Zavarian law. When a noble's life is saved in such a way, they must pledge their eternal service, or offer themselves as a mate." The air turned to ice. Everyone, including Carter's entire squad, stared at him. Jenkins let out a low chuckle. "Well, Carter, didn't know you had a thing for alien royalty." Carter shot him a glare. "Not helping." Syra, meanwhile, showed no hesitation, no embarrassment. If anything, she looked relieved. "Then it is settled." She lifted her chin. "I belong to you." Carter ran a hand down his face. "Lady, you do not belong to me." "You misunderstand," Syra said smoothly. "This is not a choice. It is law. If you reject my bond, my people will see it as an insult to our very existence. And if I accept—" Syra's crimson eyes locked onto his. "Then I am yours. In whatever way you wish." The implications of that statement hit him like a freight train. Carter had been in a lot of tense situations before. He had been held at gunpoint, captured by enemies, stranded behind enemy lines. But nothing had prepared him for an alien princess pledging herself to him in front of two armies. "Look," he said, rubbing his temples, "let's just take a step back here." A sudden explosion ripped through the air. Carter barely had time to react before his radio crackled to life. "Sergeant Carter, come in. We've got incoming. Zavarian warships just broke orbit." Carter whipped around. In the sky above, a fleet of Zavarian vessels was descending through the atmosphere. They were sleek, massive, their golden hulls gleaming under the twin suns. Jenkins cursed. "Let me guess. They're here for the princess." The captured Zavarian soldier gave a cruel smile. "You humans never should have touched her." Carter turned back to Exira. For the first time, she looked hesitant. "They will not let me stay with you." Carter took a slow breath. "Do you want to stay?" Zaira's eyes never wavered. "Yes." "Then," Carter muttered, pulling his rifle off his back, "we've got a problem." The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. An ancient alien tradition. The Zavarian warships descended like golden spears from the heavens, their presence blotting out the twin suns above Epsilon Prime. The air vibrated with the low hum of their engines, and every soldier, human and Zavarian alike, felt the shift in the battlefield. Sergeant Daniel Carter tightened his grip on his rifle. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained calm. Years of combat experience had taught him that fear was useless. Action was the only thing that mattered. Beside him, Princess Zaira stood tall, her silver hair catching the light, her crimson eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. She didn't look afraid. If anything, she looked determined. Jenkins exhaled. "I'm guessing they're not here to talk." Carter nodded grimly. "Not a chance." The radio crackled to life. "Carter, this is command. Get the hell out of there. Zavarian forces are demanding we hand over the princess immediately." Carter glanced at Zaira. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Tell them no," he said into the radio. A long pause. Then, Command's voice came back, tense. "Sergeant, do you have any idea what you've done? You violated Zavarian law by altering a member of their royal bloodline. They're calling it a genetic corruption. They want her executed." Carter's blood turned cold. "Executed?" Zaira nodded. "It was expected. My people do not tolerate change. They fear what they cannot control." Jenkins swore under his breath. "And what exactly are we supposed to do against a fleet?" "We fight," Carter said simply. Jenkins groaned. "Of course you'd say that." Before anyone could respond, a piercing voice rang through the battlefield. It wasn't transmitted over the radio. It was projected directly into their minds. "Sergeant Carter of the Terran forces, you will surrender the corrupted princess immediately. You have violated the sacred laws of the Zavarian Dominion. This is your only warning." Carter felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. The Zavarians were telepaths. High-ranking ones could send messages over vast distances. Zaira turned to him. "They will not ask twice." Carter clenched his jaw. "Good. I don't like repeating myself either." He lifted his rifle, took a breath, and aimed it toward the first descending warship. The moment of choice. The Zavarian forces touched down in a blinding golden light. The ground trembled beneath their massive ships as their armored warriors marched out in perfect formation. They were tall, elegant, deadly, each one covered in ceremonial battle armor, their helmets concealing their faces. And then he arrived. A towering figure stepped forward, his presence commanding instant silence. His armor was black, trimmed with gold, and his very existence seemed to warp the air around him. Zaira stiffened. Carter glanced at her. "Friend of yours?" She swallowed. "No, that is High Executor Karen, my father's warlord. He speaks with the power of the Emperor himself." Karen stopped a few feet away, his glowing golden eyes staring straight through Carter. His voice, when it came, was pure authority. "You have no idea what you have done, human." Carter shrugged. "Seems to me I saved someone's life." "You have done worse than that," Karen said. "You have changed her. Do you even understand what that means?" Carter crossed his arms. "You tell me." Karen's gaze flickered to Zaira, then back to Carter. "By the laws of the Dominion, when a noble's life is altered by an outsider, they are bound by life debt to the one who saved them. It is an unbreakable contract." Carter nodded. "Yeah, I've heard that part already." Karen's eyes narrowed. then you also know that she must choose servitude or union. Jenkins coughed. Ah, what now? Zara stepped forward. I will make my choice. Carter's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. Karen nodded. Then speak it before all. Zara lifted her chin. Her voice rang with strength. I choose him. The entire battlefield fell silent. Carter's eyes widened. Hold on. What? Karen's jaw tightened. Princess, I warn you. I choose Sergeant Carter, she repeated, louder this time. Not as a master, not as a captor, but as my equal. The Zavarian warriors reacted instantly. Some drew weapons, others stepped back in shock. This was not how the ritual worked. Karen's voice darkened. You are a disgrace. Syra didn't flinch. I am evolved. Carter felt the tension in the air like a storm about to break. The Zavarians were on the edge of open war. One wrong move, and this entire planet would burn. And then Karen smiled. It was a cold, cruel expression. If that is your choice, he said smoothly, then let the Emperor decide. Carter didn't like the sound of that. What does that mean? It means, Karen said, that we are leaving. He gestured, and in perfect synchronization, the Zavarian forces turned and boarded their ships. The warships lifted off, their engines roaring as they climbed back into the sky. Carter felt relief, but only for a moment. Because just before stepping into his ship, Karen looked back and said, Enjoy your final days, human. The Emperor will summon you soon, and when he does, you will beg for death. Carter exhaled slowly. That guy's a real ray of sunshine. Zara turned to him. You do not understand, Sergeant. This is not over. Carter nodded. I figured. She hesitated. The Emperor does not tolerate threats to the purity of our race. He will see me as a failure. And he will see you as... She trailed off. Carter raised an eyebrow. As what? Zara's crimson eyes burned into his. As the greatest threat the Dominion has ever faced. The escaped. Sergeant Daniel Carter had been in dangerous situations before. He had fought in trench wars, led missions behind enemy lines, and survived encounters with creatures that defied reason. But this, being declared an enemy of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, this was new. The Zavarian Dominion was the oldest ruling force in the known universe. Their empire spanned thousands of star systems, their fleets unmatched in technology and size. And now, because he had saved one life, one princess, they had branded him as a threat. Carter stood aboard the human warship Iron Fang, staring at the holographic projection of their current location. The planet Epsilon Prime was behind them, but Zavarian warships still hovered in orbit, their golden hulls glinting like silent predators. The uneasy silence on the bridge was broken by Private Jenkins. So let me get this straight, Jenkins muttered, rubbing his temples. We saved the alien princess. Turns out saving her binds her to you forever. Then, instead of just saying thank you and leaving, she declares her loyalty to you in front of her entire army. And now her dad, the Emperor of the Zavarian Dominion, wants your head on a spike. Carter nodded. That about sums it up. Jenkins exhaled sharply. Yup. We're dead. The Dominion's next move. The ship's commander, Captain Rice Alden, a hardened officer with decades of experience, crossed his arms and frowned. They let us leave the battlefield without resistance. That's what worries me. Carter nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. The Zavarians were not the kind to let an insult go unpunished. If they had truly wanted Syra back, they would have taken her by force. Instead, they had let them escape. That meant they were planning something worse. Zyra stood at the far end of the bridge, staring at the transmission device in her hands. She had been silent since their departure from the planet. Now, she turned to face them. My father is not a patient ruler, she said, her voice steady but tense. By now, he will have already sent out a decree. Captain Alden narrowed his eyes. What kind of decree? Zara exhaled. A bounty. Jenkins choked on his coffee. A what? A bounty. Tyra repeated. A galactic-level hunt issued across every major star system under Dominion influence. She turned her crimson eyes to Carter. They will not just come for you. They will come for anyone who has ever spoken your name. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Carter cursed under his breath. He had expected retaliation, but not this quickly. A galactic bounty meant that every mercenary, pirate, bounty hunter, and assassin in Dominion space was already hunting him. It wasn't just about war anymore. This was personal. Captain Alden straightened. Then we need to get you off this ship. Carter frowned. Excuse me. Alden turned to his officers. If a bounty is out, we can't risk the entire fleet. The Dominion could use this as an excuse to start a war with the Terran Republic. If Carter stays with us, we all become targets. So what? You're just going to send me out in a shuttle? No, Tyra said suddenly. There's another way. The heist. Carter raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Tyra stepped forward, pulling up a holographic display of a massive space station. It was an old Zavarian stronghold, floating in the depths of the neutral zone. This is Outpost 9, she said. It was abandoned decades ago, but it still houses one of the fastest ships in the sector, the Phantom Veil. Jenkins frowned. That sounds like a smuggler's ship. Tyra nodded. It is, or rather, it was. The Phantom Veil was an experimental stealth ship designed for deep space reconnaissance. It can run completely undetectable, even past Zavarian scanners. If we can get to it, you'll have a way to disappear. Carter crossed his arms. And what about you? Tyra hesitated. I will go with you. The bridge went silent again. Captain Alden sighed. Of course you will. Jenkins shook his head. You do realize the moment you leave with Carter, there's no turning back, right? The moment the Zavarians know you ran, you'll be labeled as a traitor. Tyra didn't blink. I have already been labeled as worse. Carter studied her. There was no hesitation in her voice, no doubt in her stance. He sighed. All right, let's steal a ship. Breaking into Outpost 9. 2 hours later, the Iron Fang dropped Carter, Tyra, and Jenkins near Outpost 9, a massive abandoned space station orbiting a dying red sun. The station's defensive systems were offline, but that didn't mean it was empty. The trio navigated the station's ruined corridors, stepping over broken machinery and dodging flickering electrical sparks. The deeper they went, the more uneasy Carter felt. Something was wrong. Jenkins whispered, I've got a bad feeling about this place. Carter nodded. Stay sharp. They reached the hangar bay, and that's when they saw it. The Phantom Veil sat in the darkness, sleek and black, its design almost predatory. It was smaller than a warship, but Carter could see the hidden power beneath its armor. Jenkins grinned. Now that is a beautiful ship. But before they could take another step, a voice echoed through the hangar. Well, well, didn't think I'd see a bounty this big land right in my lap. Carter turned slowly. A group of bounty hunters stepped out from the shadows, weapons raised. Their leader, a tall reptilian alien with cybernetic arms, grinned. Sergeant Carter, you're worth a fortune. Jenkins sighed. And here we go again. The ambush. The bounty hunters opened fire. Carter dove for cover, rolling behind a cargo crate as energy blasts sizzled past him. Tyra moved with unnatural speed, her Zavarian agility letting her evade shots that would have killed a normal soldier. Jenkins grabbed a grenade, pulled the pin, and lobbed it over his shoulder. Catch. Boom. The explosion sent debris flying, scattering the bounty hunters. Carter rushed forward, tackling one of the hunters and slamming his rifle butt into their helmet. Tyra followed, striking with precise, lethal movements. Within seconds, the hangar was clear. Jenkins wiped sweat from his forehead. I am getting way too old for this. Carter smirked. Then you'll hate the next part. They sprinted to the Phantom Veil. The ship's controls lit up as Syra accessed the main console. Carter sat in the pilot's seat. "All right, let's see if this thing still flies." The engines roared to life. And just as the bounty hunters regrouped outside the hangar, the Phantom Veil shot into space, vanishing into the darkness. Carter exhaled. That was close. Syra turned to him. Not close enough. Because flashing on the scanner was a new signal, and it was coming from the Dominion itself. The Emperor had just issued a kill order. And now, the entire galaxy was after them. The battle for Syra. The Phantom Veil hurtled through deep space, its sleek frame cutting through the darkness like a shadow slipping between the stars. Its experimental cloaking systems made it invisible to most scanners, but Carter knew better than to feel safe. Because somewhere out there, the Zavarian Dominion was hunting them. Carter sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the holographic display. He had barely slept since they had stolen the ship. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined golden warships closing in, bounty hunters lurking in the void, or worse, an entire Dominion fleet appearing out of nowhere. He rubbed his temples. It wasn't paranoia, if it was true. A beeping sound broke the silence. Jenkins, strapped into the co-pilot seat, groaned. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Carter checked the long-range sensors. A blip was approaching fast. Syra, seated across from them, leaned forward. "A ship. More than one," Carter muttered. He zoomed in on the reading, and his stomach twisted. There were 6 ships. No, 7. Small, fast, designed for pursuit. Bounty hunters. Syra confirmed, her voice unreadable. "They found us." Jenkins muttered a curse. How the hell did they find us? Carter had a bad feeling. They must have hacked the old emergency beacon in this ship. He gritted his teeth. I should have disabled that first. Jenkins sat up. So, what's the plan? Carter was already flipping switches, rerouting power to the ship's engines. We run. Syra's eyes narrowed. You cannot outrun them forever. I don't need forever, Carter replied. Just long enough. The chase begins. Outside, the bounty hunters' ships broke through the void, their engines burning hot as they accelerated toward the Phantom Veil. A voice crackled over the comms, tripping with amusement. Sergeant Carter, I was hoping we'd find you first. Carter didn't recognize the voice, but he knew the type. A professional killer. A predator. I'm flattered, Carter shot back, banking the Phantom Veil into a hard turn. The artificial gravity strained against them as he pushed the ship's limits. But I'm not interested in bounty negotiations. The voice chuckled. Oh, you misunderstand. There is no negotiation. Your head is worth more than most planets. I'd rather collect it personally. Jenkins groaned. Yeah, that's not creepy at all. Carter checked the scanner. The bounty hunters were closing fast. Then, the first shot hit. A bright explosion rocked the ship as a plasma bolt grazed the left wing. The impact sent warning alerts blaring across the cockpit. Jenkins gripped the controls. Shields at 40%. Another hit like that, and we're cooked. Carter clenched his jaw. All right, no more running. Turning the tables. He reached for the manual weapons controls. The Phantom Veil wasn't a warship, but it had a few tricks. Twin-mounted ion cannons hummed to life, their targeting systems locking onto the incoming ships. Carter's finger hovered over the trigger. Then, Tyra placed a hand on his arm. Let me. Carter hesitated, but something in her crimson gaze made him pause. She moved to the weapons console, her movements precise, controlled. Despite having never flown a human ship before, her fingers danced over the controls like she had done this 1,000 times. Carter barely had time to react before she fired. The Phantom Veil's ion cannons roared to life, sending pulses of blue energy streaking through space. 2 bounty hunter ships took direct hits. Their shields flickered and failed, leaving them drifting. Jenkins whistled. Not bad, Princess. But it wasn't over. The lead bounty hunter's ship dodged the counterattack with a sharp barrel roll. He fired a disruptor missile, a weapon designed to disable ships without destroying them. Carter yanked the controls, sending the Phantom Veil into a wild spin. The missile missed by inches, but another ship was already repositioning. They were getting cornered. And then, a Xiverian warship appeared, the arrival of the warlord. Carter's blood ran cold as the massive golden vessel emerged from hyperspace, dwarfing the bounty hunters like an apex predator. Jenkins swore, "Oh, come on. Now." Zyra's expression darkened. "It's him." Carter didn't need to ask. He already knew. The High Executor Karen had found them. A voice boomed through their ship's speakers, deep and commanding. "You cannot run from the Dominion, Carter. Surrender, Zyra, and you may yet live." Carter exhaled slowly. "Yeah, that's not happening." Karen sighed. "I expected as much." The warship charged its primary weapon. Zyra's fingers tightened on the controls. "If they hit us, we won't survive." Carter grinned. "Then let's make sure they miss. The impossible escape." With a flick of a switch, Carter killed the Phantom Veil's engines. The ship went dark. No movement. No signals. Just empty space. Jenkins held his breath. "Are you insane?" "We're sitting ducks." "Trust me," Carter muttered. The bounty hunters hesitated. The Xiverian warship's cannons charged, scanning for a target, but found nothing. To them, the Phantom Veil had vanished. Zyra's crimson eyes widened. "Stealth mode." Carter nodded. "They can't hit what they can't see." Seconds stretched into eternity. The Xiverian warship hovered, scanning, waiting. Then, Karen's voice returned, colder than before. "Impressive, but it will not save you." The warship fired blindly, golden beams slicing through the void. But Carter had already plotted a course. He fired the engines at full thrust. The Phantom Veil shot past the Xiverian blockade, slipping into a hidden warp lane, a narrow hyperspace corridor known only to smugglers. As the ship vanished, Karen's final words echoed through space. "You cannot run forever, Carter. The Emperor will have you." Carter leaned back in his seat, exhaling. Jenkins shook his head. "You just pissed off the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Carter smirked. "Yeah, but we're still alive." Zyra turned to him. "For now." Carter met her gaze. "For now." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. A new power awakens. The Phantom Veil rocketed through hyperspace, disappearing into the unmapped corridors of deep space. For now, they had escaped. But Carter knew the Dominion wouldn't stop hunting them. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhaling slowly. His hands still gripped the controls, muscles taut from the fight. Beside him, Jenkins was muttering to himself, rubbing his temples like he had the worst headache of his life. Zyra sat across from them, silent. Her crimson eyes glowed softly in the dim cockpit light. She hadn't spoken since their escape. Carter finally turned to her. "You okay?" She didn't answer at first. Her expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand. It was glowing. A faint, pulsing red light shimmered over her fingers, flickering like fire trapped beneath her skin. It wasn't Xiverian energy. It wasn't human. It was something else. Jenkins sat up straighter. That normal for Xiverians." Zyra turned her hand over, staring at the light. Her voice, when she spoke, was distant. "No, this is new." A deep unease settled over the cockpit. Carter's instincts screamed at him. Something was happening to her, something no one understood. And that scared him more than the Dominion fleet. The change within. Zyra stood abruptly. "I need to run a scan." She left the cockpit, her silver hair swaying behind her. Carter and Jenkins exchanged looks before following her. The Phantom Veil's medbay was small but functional. Zyra sat on the diagnostic table, activating the autoscanner. The machine whirred to life, projecting a holographic model of her body. Carter's stomach tightened. The golden Xaverian biosignatures in her scan were shifting. Human red was spreading through her veins. Jenkins whistled. That's probably not good. Zyra's fingers curled into fists. I knew I had changed, but this is more than a simple mutation. She looked at Carter. Your blood did this. Carter crossed his arms. I didn't exactly plan it. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. The truth is undeniable. I am evolving into something that has never existed before. A sharp beeping sound interrupted them. The scan detected something new. A pulse of energy rippled through Zyra's body. The room dimmed for a moment, as if the ship itself was reacting to her. The diagnostic machine flickered, static crackling in the air. Then, suddenly, the ship shut down. The lights cut out. The engines hummed to a dead silence. Jenkins stumbled. Oh, hell no. What just happened? Carter grabbed his sidearm, instincts kicking in. Zyra, what did you do? Zyra's breathing was sharp, controlled. I didn't do anything, but her hands were still glowing. Then, just as suddenly, the ship rebooted. The lights flashed back on. The air systems hissed to life. The hum of the engines returned, but the control panel had changed. Carter looked at the ship's main interface. Symbols flickered across the screen, symbols that weren't there before. Jenkins stepped closer, tapping at the console. What the hell is this? I don't recognize any of these. Zyra did. She whispered, This is Xaverian code. Carter frowned. Why would the ship suddenly display Xaverian code? Zyra stood slowly, staring at the glowing interface. Because I just connected to the ship. The awakening. Carter and Jenkins stared at her. Jenkins let out a nervous chuckle. Right. You just connected to the ship, like with Wi-Fi or something. Zyra shook her head. No, it wasn't mechanical. It was biological. I felt something inside me reach out when the scanner activated. And for a moment, the ship responded. Carter didn't like this. Zyra, this ship is human-made. You shouldn't be able to interface with it. I know, she murmured. But I did. She turned toward the screen. As soon as she reached for it, the interface responded. The symbols changed, rearranging themselves. The ship's engines purred smoother, stronger. It was as if the vessel had been upgraded. Jenkins stepped back. Nope. This is getting way too weird. Carter wasn't far behind him, but something told him this was just the beginning. Zyra closed her eyes, concentrating. The glow around her fingers intensified, and suddenly the ship's navigation system pulled up a map of the galaxy. A red marker blinked on the screen. Carter narrowed his eyes. What is that? Zyra opened her eyes, her breath unsteady. That is my father's location. Carter froze. You're telling me you just pulled up the Emperor's coordinates. She nodded slowly. Not intentionally. But I can feel it. I can feel him watching, searching for me. Jenkins groaned. Great. So now the psychic space princess is linked to the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. This just keeps getting better. The Dominion strikes back. Before anyone could respond, the ship's warning alarm blared. Multiple vessels detected. Carter spun toward the main display. Outside the phantom veil, the deep void of space was suddenly filled with golden warships. Xaverian hunters had found them. Jenkins swore. How? We were cloaked. Carter's mind raced. The Emperor must have sensed Zyra's presence. Then, a transmission came through. A hologram of High Executor Karen appeared, his expression unreadable. You've run far enough, Sergeant Carter. Carter clenched his jaw. Not far enough. Apparently. Karen tilted his head. You do not understand what you have done. Zyra is no longer Xaverian. She is no longer one of us. His gaze turned sharp. She is something unnatural. Zyra stiffened. Karen continued, his voice a blade. My orders have changed. Carter frowned. Meaning? Karen's golden eyes glowed. The Emperor no longer wants her alive. Silence. Zyra froze. Carter felt his pulse spike. Jenkins let out a weak chuckle. Okay, I know things were bad before, but did we just get promoted to Galactic Public Enemy #1? Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed the controls. Buckle up. The fight of their lives. The Phantom Veil's engines roared as Carter slammed the throttle forward. The ship jerked into motion, diving into an escape trajectory. Outside, the Zavarian warships opened fire. Golden energy blasts streaked past, barely missing. The shields flared, absorbing the impacts, but they wouldn't hold forever. Jenkins fired up the ship's weapon systems, locking onto the nearest pursuers. Returning fire. Zyra, her expression hardened, placed her hand on the ship's interface. And then, the Phantom Veil surged forward, faster than Carter had ever seen. For the first time, he realized, this ship wasn't just human anymore. It was evolving with Zyra. And that gave them a fighting chance. The final stand. The Phantom Veil tore through the void, its engines roaring as Carter pushed the ship beyond its limits. Behind them, the Zavarian warships pursued relentlessly, their golden hulls glowing against the abyss of space. Carter's hands gripped the controls, his heart pounding like a war drum. This wasn't just another chase. This was a final stand. They're gaining on us, Jenkins shouted, his fingers flying over the weapons console. I can't shake them. Zyra stood beside him, her crimson eyes glowing with something beyond fear, something Carter couldn't quite name. She placed her hand on the ship's console, and instantly, the Phantom Veil responded. The engines hummed differently, not just working harder, but changing. The ship was adapting, evolving, just like Zyra. And then she spoke. No more running. Carter shot her a look. What? She turned to him, something ancient and powerful in her gaze. This ends here. The ship's systems flashed red, a warning siren blaring. Enemy flagship detected. Carter stiffened. His stomach twisted as he checked the scanners. A massive warship emerged from hyperspace, 10 times the size of anything they had faced before. Its golden surface was lined with energy cannons, and at its center, the crest of the Zavarian Emperor gleamed like a god's judgment. Jenkins let out a low whistle. Yup. That's the We're Screwed class battleship. Carter clenched his jaw. Karen's here. The ship's comms crackled to life, and a cold, familiar voice filled the cockpit. Sergeant Carter. It was High Executor Karen. His voice was calm, confident, deadly. Your defiance has been amusing, Karen said. But this is where it ends. Carter's grip tightened on the controls. You keep saying that. Karen ignored him. The Emperor has made his decree. Zyra must be destroyed. She is an aberration, a corruption of our noble bloodline. And you? He paused, his voice turning to iron. You are the disease that infected her. Zyra tensed. Carter could see the war inside her. Her people wanted her dead. Her father had abandoned her. But she wasn't broken. She was angry. She took a step forward, her presence radiating power. I was your princess once, Karen. I was the heir to the Dominion. Her voice dropped to something sharper, something unstoppable. But I am not yours anymore. Karen didn't hesitate. Then you die with him. The Zavarian warship's weapons charge, its golden cannons swirling with destruction. One direct hit, and the Phantom Veil would be dust. Carter turned to Zyra. Got any ideas? Zyra closed her eyes. The glow beneath her skin intensified, spreading through her veins like wildfire. Yes. She reached out, and the ship obeyed. The Phantom Veil vibrated, its systems fusing with something deeper, something alive. The lights inside the cockpit flickered, and then the ship's AI spoke for the first time. Connection established. Carter's breath hitched. What the hell is happening? Zaira opened her eyes, and for the first time, Carter understood. She wasn't just evolving. She had become something new. The birth of a new power. The Zavarian warship fired. A golden blast of pure destruction tore through space, screaming toward them. Carter braced for impact. But it never came. Instead, the phantom veil moved faster than physics should allow, tilting at an impossible angle, avoiding the attack with a grace that no ship should have. Jenkins gawked. Oh, that is not normal. Carter's mind raced. Zaira, what did you do? She exhaled slowly. I am connected to the ship. It is an extension of me now. Jenkins blinked. You're piloting the ship with your mind. Yes. Another shot fired from Karen's ship. But this time, Zaira didn't dodge. She lifted a hand, and the phantom veil's hull shimmered. The golden energy blast bent away, dispersing into harmless streams of light. Carter's heart slammed against his ribs. Jenkins let out a hysterical laugh. Okay, now I know I'm dreaming. But Karen was silent. For the first time, the High Executor of the Dominion did not have words. Zaira turned to Carter. We are not running anymore. She pressed her palm against the control panel, and the phantom veil turned toward the enemy fleet. Carter's mouth went dry. Wait, are we actually about to fight a warship? Yes. Jenkins threw up his hands. Of course we are. The battle of the Dominion's fall. The phantom veil surged forward. Carter expected the ship to fire missiles, to engage in a dogfight, to evade. But Sarah had something else in mind. She dove straight for the Zavarian warship. Karen's forces panicked, scrambling to lock onto them. But the phantom veil was too fast, too unpredictable. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was something alive. And then, as Zaira reached out, and for the first time, Carter felt it. Something inside the Zavarian warship cracked. The golden hull, the untouchable armor of the Dominion's flagship, began to crumble from the inside out. Karen's voice roared through the comms. What have you doing? Zaira's voice was calm. I have broken your chains. The Zavarian warship collapsed inward, its energy sources overloading as Kyra's influence spread through its systems like a virus. And then, it exploded. The end of the hunt. Silence followed. The Zavarian fleet hesitated. Their flagship was gone. Their leader was dead. They could have kept fighting. But instead, they fled. One by one, their ships vanished into hyperspace, abandoning the battle. The Dominion had never known fear. Until today. Carter let out a long breath. He turned to Zaira, who stood unmoving, her body still glowing faintly. Jenkins wiped sweat from his forehead. Remind me to never piss her off. Carter exhaled, staring out at the empty void where Karen's warship once stood. It's over. Zaira turned to him, and for the first time since this all started, she smiled. No, she said softly. It's just beginning. The legend begins. Across the galaxy, news of the High Executor's death spread like wildfire. The Dominion was shaken. The Emperor's forces fractured. And in the shadows of the universe, people began to whisper one name. Not Carter's. Not the Dominion's. Hers. Zaira. The first of her kind. The one who had defied an empire. And beside her, the human who had changed everything. The legend had begun.